Welcome to Beat Diabetes, and once again today we're going to look at the book called Good Energy by Casey Means. If you've been following along the last 3 videos I've made, I've talked about the pros and the cons. There are some books where they're almost all pros. This book got some pros and cons as far as I'm concerned. Now, we all have to make our own judgment and form our own opinion about it, but I've tried to explain some of the things I like about it and some of the things I'm not too crazy about it. We're going to try to finish it up this time. I don't plan to do any more reviews on this book, but I thought I would get into this final one. You know, as I think about Casey Means and looking at this book, the conclusion I draw is that she is conflicted. She's got mixed emotions about this whole area of how you beat metabolic syndrome. And when she talks about good energy, which is the title of the book, she's basically talking about how not to have metabolic syndrome, how to be metabolically flexible, how to be glycemically sensitive, and so forth. And when I think about Casey, it's like her instincts tell her to focus almost entirely on nutrition and whole foods. I mean, that's really where her heart is at, as I read her book. And obviously, I don't know her, never met her. I've seen a few of her interviews and been looking at her book for a while. And I think she's conflicted because in her heart of hearts, she really wants to forget about the whole idea of low carb and just tell you eat natural. Eat whole foods, forget about the so-called industrial foods and foods that have been processed at all. Just go natural, baby, and everything will be fine. That's where her heart is. But the problem she's facing is she's running a company called Levels where they try to help people that have runaway blood sugar and I guess other issues as well. And she's strongly recommending that they use CGMs, and she's totally involved in the idea of CGMs and not having severe blood sugar spikes, which is going to drive you a little bit in the other direction. Because if you're watching blood sugar spikes, it's not going to matter so much whether they're whole foods or half foods or quarter foods. What's going to matter is how many carbs and sugars do they have. So, for example, you can eat a mango or a couple of bananas and your blood sugar will go through the roof. Now, they're whole, they're natural, and yet they don't do a thing for your blood sugar. And so you find her making statements that almost seem to contradict herself within this book. One of the examples of this, I think I shared this last week, but I'll just kind of give you a quick review. She talks about how she knows people who are very intelligent and they go for the vegan type diet, the natural whole foods, and they don't worry about the carbs. They eat plenty of carbs. She says, I know other very intelligent people that do the keto, low carb, high fat diet. She says they both seem to work. They're both right. And she makes this statement, all these diets can work for good health because all emphasize primarily unprocessed whole foods to give the cells what they need to function. Well, to me, this is the real Casey. The other Casey is not a fake Casey. She's beginning to understand that carbs and sugars can drive blood sugar high no matter how whole and natural they are. And you get the idea she's not exactly comfortable, and so she makes some statements that lean one way and some that lean the other. Anyway, that's not the main point I wanted to make in this particular book, but one of the things that kind of astounded me is the fact that she gives you a checklist of giving yourself points for if you're being a good boy or girl, and if you do certain things and you avoid certain things. And I did a quick count. I could be off because I did it fast, but it looked to me like, by my count, she had 125 different statements that you have to check if you're doing what she says to do and not doing what she says not to do. And I mean, they just range everywhere. Let me just share a few of them. We won't have time to get into all of them for sure, but these are you're supposed to agree with and put into practice in your life. So here's some of them. And some of the things she says make sense. And in fact, I'd say most of them make some sense and probably would be good. But to me, when you give people 125 rules to follow, well, that's just crazy. So anyway, here are some of them. One of them says, I'm certain I eat at least 30 different plant foods per week. between fruits, vegetables, spices, herbs, nuts, seeds, and legumes. So 30 different plant foods per week. You're supposed to check that. Yep, that's me, 30 different plant foods. Well, I don't think I even qualified for that before I was even watching my diet, let alone now that I want to do low carb. Another item she mentions, I eat at least one unsweetened probiotic food every day, such as unsweetened yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, natto, tempeh, or miso. Well, I'm just thinking about the average Joe reading this book, and I guess that's me. I'm the average Dennis. I don't even know what some of these foods are. Natto. What in the world is natto? If you took a man on the street interview and you said, have you been eating a lot of natto lately? He'd look at you like you were crazy. Or what was the other one? Miso. Go to some random stranger, say, when's the last time you had a big bowl of miso? They'd be like, what? And yet she tells us we should be eating these every day. At least one unsweetened probiotic food. Another thing she says, if I eat outside the house, I ask about what oils are used and avoid foods with refined seed oils. Well, I mean, that's all over the low-carb movement, is avoid the seed oils. And, I don't know the actual tests that they support that with, but I take it for granted that's probably true. But that's a little fanatical, saying whenever I eat outside the house, I'll ask if they bring some food. I'll say, did you bake this or make this or fry this with a seed oil? I mean, can you imagine going to a restaurant, or worse yet, going to a friend's house and he serves you a nice plate of or a table full of food, and you ask about whether he used seed oils or not? Theoretically, I guess that's a good idea. Practically speaking, I would never do that. I have never done that, and nor have you, I'd be willing to bet. Another one, I avoid conventional meats and eat mostly organic, pasture-raised, grass-fed meats. Who can afford that these days? It's tough enough to afford regular meat, let alone pasture-raised, grass-fed meat. And again, this is not something the average person is going to do. And if you're going to a doctor and he tells you you've got diabetes, you say, Doc, what do I do? And they start reading all these things down for you to do, you'd be entirely depressed twice over by the time you leave that doctor's office. Number one, you found out you've got diabetes. Number two, you got to follow all these 125 rules to beat it. Another one, I avoid conventional eggs and eat mostly organic, pasture-raised eggs. I've never in my life looked for organic, pasture-raised eggs. Eggs are expensive enough. I just go for any egg, and that's what I eat. And it's working for me in terms of A1C, in terms of my general health. I'm 71 years old. I'm not doing too bad. Now, if I kick off tomorrow, maybe you can point at me and say, well, aha, it's because he didn't check on those eggs, and therefore he died too young. But so far, so good. She gets into sleep. She's big on sleep. Sleep is a good thing. I think most of us understand that sleep is going to help you with your blood sugar, although it's not the number one thing or not even the number 2 or 3 thing, but it's important. She says, I consistently use a sleep tracking device. Well, I don't. And I've never met anybody that does. I'm sure there are some people, or she wouldn't be saying this, but I don't. And then she talks about light, the importance of us getting enough light on our body. She says, I spend at least 15 minutes outside within 1 hour of waking every day. So you wake up in the morning and within an hour, you're out letting the sunshine hit your face to kind of improve things for you. She says, I watch the sunset outdoors at least 3 days a week. So 3 days a week when the sun is setting, you rush outside and you watch the sunset. And somehow that's supposed to help you get your good energy. This is getting more and more new agey. She says, I don't view any screens in the evening without using blue light blocking glasses. Let me ask you, how many of you listening to me, Beat Diabetes viewers, use blue light blocking glasses when you look at your computer screen at night or your TV? I mean, I don't know anybody that does, but Casey says you should. And then one of the points that's going to help you get good energy is I've checked my water quality against the Environmental Working Group, EWG, never heard of them, database, and understand whether specific contaminants are above recommended levels. So I'm going to take my water to the EWG, whatever in the world that is, and have them check it to make sure my water levels are fine. And she just goes on and on. I could give you more, but time does not permit. I will give you a few more in a minute. But 125, if I counted right, maybe more, different points you've got to check and say, this is my way to beating metabolic issues and diabetes. Let's say I'm wandering around in Fort Worth and I'm lost. I want to get to Dallas. And finally, I just give up. I can't, my phone GPS is not working. And so I stop and I call somebody over. It's an older lady. And I say, well, excuse me, ma'am, but could you tell me how I can get to Dallas from here? I've been driving around for an hour or more, and I just can't figure out how to get out of Fort Worth and into Dallas. She looks at me and says, well, sir, the first thing I want to say is, I'm looking at your car. Your seatbelts don't look very good. I think you need to replace your seatbelts. Before you do anything else, replace those seatbelts. And then what I'm going to tell you is, I'm going to give you the directions to go. But what I want you to do is make sure that when you drive to Dallas, every 5 minutes you stop and check your oil pressure and check your air tires, the air in your tires, because that could be a real problem. And by the way, that shirt is dirty. You need to change your shirt before you even think about going to Dallas. And then I'm going to, she gives you instructions. You go right, you go left, you go right, you go left, you stop off in this little community. She says, every 10 minutes you drive, you stop altogether and wait 30 minutes and just walk around. It'll be good for you. And she gives me a list of like dozens of instructions about my car, about my personal appearance, about the way to go. And if I followed her advice, I would be like 12 hours to get to Dallas at the very best. And I'm like, well, thank you, ma'am. I drive a little further. I stop another guy. I say, how do I get to Dallas from here? He says, you see that road? I say, yeah. He says, get on that and follow it for about a mile, and then you'll see Highway 30. And you get on Highway 30 going east, and just drive, and you'll be there in 30 minutes or 35 minutes. I say, okay, thanks. I think I'll take your advice. Now, that's kind of the difference between Casey and what some of us are saying. You don't need 125 rules. You don't need to make sure your water lines up with the EWG. You don't need to walk outside and let the sun hit you for 15 minutes every day before you even start your day. You need to do a few basic things, and you can whip diabetes. You can beat that sucker. Basically, number one, cut from 3 meals and snacks to 2 meals in a 6-hour period of time and no snacks. Now, you may need to take some time to work into that. I'm not saying do it overnight. You may need a month, 2 months, maybe even 3 months to gradually get yourself to that point. You do it too quickly, it could be harmful. You could get yourself sick. Your body needs gradual. So I'm not saying do it overnight. If you're eating the standard diet and you try to do this, you'll probably feel pretty miserable for a while. But number one, eventually within 1, 2, 3 months, get down to 2 meals per day within 6 hours, and no snacks at all. Those 2 meals, enjoy them. Fill yourself up on them. Make sure they're low carb. Make sure they're low carb. And what I mean is no more than 20 grams per meal, but probably 15 would be better. That third meal, the meal that you skip, whether it's breakfast or dinner, you can have some bulletproof coffee, which is coffee with some butter and some cream in it, or maybe some coconut oil in it. Or if you just have to chew on something, have a boiled egg or 2, no more than that. But 2 main regular meals, no snacking. The 2 meals you eat are low carb, and try to make one of those meals carnivore. I mean, those basic rules, you'll whip diabetes most likely. I can't guarantee it, obviously, people are different. But the majority of type 2 diabetics will get below 6.5, and they'll do it within 5 or 6 months. It may take you longer, depending on where you are, but most will do that. Now, she not only gives you all these rules, But she gives you some rules about how to relate to the universe. This is where it really gets weird. She says, for example, under mind-body, the rules you have to follow to get your good energy, I ground regularly. I didn't know you had to ground, but she says you have to ground regularly by sitting or standing barefoot directly on the ground. Take off your shoes, take off your socks, go stand on the ground for a while, and let the earth's vibrations come up into your body, apparently. And the next one is, I feel limitless. Guess what? You've got limits. I've got limits. We've all got limits. The idea that we're limitless is ridiculous. Every human being is born into this world with limits on them. And then one other one that I think is weirdest of all. I feel a sense of connection to everything in the universe. I'm connected to everything. Well, you talk about new age. Can you imagine some 60-year-old truck driver who's about 80 pounds overweight, and he comes into the doctor's office, and the doctor says, well, you've got diabetes. I've just checked. Your A1C is 12. It's terrible. What should I do, doc? Well, you need to start by being connected to the universe. You see that bush out the window? Yeah. Do you feel connected to that bush? Well, not exactly. Well, you need to start practicing feeling connected to the bushes and the trees and the grass and the stones and the whole universe, the stars, everything. We're all connected. And if you can just feel connected enough, you'll whip diabetes for sure. I did a little additional research beyond just her book to find out a little more about Casey, and I was shocked to realize just how deep she goes into her New Age beliefs. She puts out a newsletter, and in this particular newsletter I'm going to quote from, she talks about how she found love at age 35 and the steps she took to try to find a fiance, find a guy that would marry her. She says, I set up a small meditation shrine in my house and prayed to photos of my ancestors, asking for support on my personal journey. And then she says, I went to weekly group meditations and spiritual lectures at Self-Realization Fellowship to tune in with the spirit. Another step, I worked with a spiritual medium. Well, a medium is someone who talks to dead people. I worked with a spiritual medium who helped me try to connect with my spirit guides for support and guidance. I did full moon ceremonies with grounded, powerful women where we called in abundance and let go of what wasn't serving us and amplified each other's dreams. I hiked alone and talked out loud to the trees, letting them know I was ready for partnership and asking if they could help. I made wishes on heads-up pennies. I made wishes when the clock struck 11:11, and I made wishes on the first stars I saw in the night sky. Now, some of you are probably saying, Dennis, you're a hypocrite. After all, you let some of your Christianity peep out and leak out sometimes in your talks, and I plead guilty, I do. So you say, what's the difference? Well, there's a couple of differences. First of all, I'm right and she's wrong. I follow the one who walks on water, raised dead people, and healed lepers, and died for the sins of the world and rose again. And she's trying to preach this new agey, feel connected to the whole universe. So that's one big difference. And the other is, I don't say you have to be a Christian to beat diabetes. We've had lots of people that were not Christians that have beat diabetes. Now, it's not that God had nothing to do with that. I mean, he upholds us all. He gives us the very breath we breathe. But we've had Muslims and Hindus and atheists and agnostics that have all beat diabetes watching this channel, putting up with Dennis's Christianity a little bit here and there. I don't push it too hard because there are certain basic principles that will work for anybody. I remember one time I was about to interview a lady, and she said, well, I hope you're not going to ask me anything religious because I'm not a very religious person. I said, don't worry about it. And I didn't, because we want to communicate that you can beat diabetes, and anybody and everybody pretty much can. So when she makes this part of her list of feeling connected to the universe, feeling limitless, anything is possible, it's like a little bit too much, Casey. If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and you've just discovered this channel, let me recommend that you go to our Uploads page, which will give you access to every diabetic video we've posted since we began. As you work your way through all our videos, I believe you'll find the help you need. A link to our Uploads page is in the description.